Just then, a lawyer stood up to test Jesus.
Master, Master,
Yes?
what must I do to inherit eternal life?
Jesus replied, well, what is written in the law? What do you read there?
The law? Oh, the law. Oh, just heard this. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your strength and all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself.
Well done, counselor. Do this, and you shall live.
But the lawyer, wanting to justify himself, said, but master, who is my neighbor?
Listen. A man was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho when he fell into the hands of robbers. They stripped him and they beat him. They went away, leaving him half dead.
Now it just so happened by chance that a priest was walking along that same road. And when he saw the man, he crossed by on the other side. And likewise, a Levite, when he came to the place where the man was, he saw him, and he crossed by on the other side.
But a Samaritan who was traveling in that area came near him. And when he saw him, he was moved with compassion and went to him and bound all of his wounds after pouring oil and wine on them.
And then he loaded the man onto his own animal, and he led him to an inn, and he took care of him. Now the next day, he gave the innkeeper 2 denarii, and he said to him, take care of this man, and when I come back, I will make good any extra expense you have.
So, of these 3, the priest, the Levite, and the Samaritan, which of these do you think proved himself a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of thieves?
Well, the one who showed him mercy.
Go and do the same yourself.
Go and do the same myself.
Go and do the same yourselves. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Just 2 words, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. Harvey Weinstein.
Oh, man.
Successful movie mogul, co-founder of Miramax Films, estimated worth $200 million, and I suspect he would give it all back if he could exchange that for a good reputation. Whenever he dies, I feel sorry for the person who's going to have the dubious honor of officiating his memorial service. What a hefty challenge. How could you possibly mask his reputation as a sexual predator with a veneer of dignity? He's one of the latest, as you know, in a string of men who have been exposed over the past couple of years. Bill O'Reilly, Bill Cosby, Roger Ailes, NPR's chief editor Michael Oreskes, comedian Louis C.K. All of these people had risen to the top of their fields. But now they have been publicly humiliated for their decadent behavior. Their reputations permanently sullied. Then last week we learned that 3 UCLA basketball players won't be suiting up for games anytime soon. They're under house arrest in China for shoplifting. What they did was not merely stupid. Stealing is wrong, and they know it. Of course, these are merely the high-profile stories of ethically empty individuals. Daily, we read of murders, and it seems that weekly, we read of mass killings. Like a dam that has burst, stories gush forth about hate and greed and selfishness and envy and deception. The Christian church is essential to our society because it can play a major role in shaping people's character. When the church is true to the core teachings of Jesus, it may be the best hope for stopping this downward spiral of standards. When he was in the 6th grade, Jeff came home from school one day and said, "Dad, I'm tired of being a goody two-shoes. I'm always the odd guy out. The popular guys, they have all the fun." His father listened to him patiently and said, "Well, maybe you ought to try this. Over the next 3 weeks, go ahead and do a little mischief. Do what you want to do, and then let's get back together in 3 weeks and let's talk about that." Well, the very next day after school, Jeff came to his dad and said that he was finished with the bad behavior. He'd thrown a pencil at his teacher when she turned her back. She spun around and demanded to know who threw the pencil. Jeff raised his hand and said, "I did it." Teacher marched over to Jeff's desk and told him that he shouldn't take the blame for other people's bad behavior. And at that point, she turned to Kyle, grabbed him by the scruff of the neck, and yanked him out of the class. The teacher knew the 2 boys. She'd witnessed their basic character, and the errant behavior just did not fit with what she knew about Jeff. However, it corresponded exactly with what she had seen in Kyle. Character is not an add-on to one's personality. Character represents the essence of who a person is. The church can be a driving force in shaping one's character, but integrity does not materialize overnight. Character is formed, shaped, and reshaped over an extended period. It emerges gradually and is highly influenced by role models. Humans learn by modeling the behavior of their elders. Whether you signed up for it or not, if you have children or grandchildren, you play a major role in shaping their character. They notice when you sit on the horn and curse the driver who cut in front of you. They also notice when you buy a backpack and supplies for a low-income child. They notice when you make a racist comment They also notice when you donate money to buy a latrine or a water filter for a Guatemalan family. They notice when you bend the truth. They also notice when you serve as a mentor for an at-risk child. Children and grandchildren are like little sponges. They're just constantly soaking up the actions they see, the words they hear, and the emotions they feel from the people who are consequential in their lives. Now, in addition to absorbing traits of role models, character is also shaped by habits. In the same way that regular exercise can make you a healthy person, making a habit of always telling the truth makes you an honest person. Learning to put off immediate gratification shapes you into a patient person. Doing good deeds for others carves you into a kind person. Positive role models and healthy habits help us develop a virtuous character. It also helps to have the grounding of a community of faith. In a faithful church, members are expected to follow the way of Jesus, which is an unfolding adventure that fashions our character while at the same time injecting our lives with vitality. In a community of faith that provides opportunities for youth to feed the hungry, to hand out toiletries to the homeless, to provide backpacks and Christmas boxes for people they'll never meet, opportunities to make friendships with other youth in Guatemala. They learn that followers of Jesus are compassionate and generous and grateful. They learn to switch the focus from themselves to others. And they get to experience that joy that comes from sacrificing for another person. A few minutes ago, Shelley and Mary Beth helped open up the story of the Good Samaritan for us. It reminds us that people also need stories to become virtuous. We know this story well. A lawyer, which in the first century meant a religious scholar who knew the Hebrew law, approached Jesus with a question. What must I do to inherit eternal life? Why did he pose that question? Out of curiosity? Nope. He posed that question because he already knew the answer. And he wanted to highlight his impressive wisdom and stellar character. But Jesus played along with him a little bit. What's written in the law? The man lowered his voice and spoke with all the gravity he could muster. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, and your neighbor as yourself. Jesus replied, you've given the right answer. Feeling confident after Jesus touched his shoulder and praised him, the man posed a second question. Who is my neighbor? I think he may have asked that question because he'd spent time crafting a very good answer, and he knew that if he shared it, he would dazzle everybody standing nearby. But Jesus disarmed him. He told a story. Jesus said there's a man walking down the road from the high hills of Jerusalem down the 18-mile trek down to Jericho, which is 800 feet below sea level. That's a rocky road. It goes through the wilderness. It's a dangerous place. It was known as being hazardous. A man is beaten. He's left for dead in a ditch. The story had plausibility. Now, by chance, a priest happens to be walking down that road, and aha, the lawyer is thinking, the priest will surely jump into action and help that guy. But when the priest saw the man, he angled for the other side of the road. Another man, a devout temple assistant, saw the man in the ditch, and he followed the same path as the priest. Why? Why did they avoid him? I don't think it was because they were unmoved by the man's suffering. But it could be that they lacked courage. Perhaps it looked like a setup. They would stop to help the man only to find that it was a trap. He had accomplices nearby ready to pounce. Compassion is an important virtue and is a potential motivator, but it is not enough. They also needed courage. They needed to be brave enough to get involved. Now we hear a Samaritan is traveling down that same road, and he not only had compassion, but this man also possessed courage. The Samaritan stopped and bandaged the man and put the man on his donkey and then took him to an innkeeper where he could recuperate. The next morning, when the Samaritan is continuing his journeys, he gives the innkeeper money to take care of him, whatever he needs, and says, on my way back, if you spend any more, I'll cover that too. So the Samaritan was not only brave and compassionate, he was also generous. The fact that he told the innkeeper he would check back to cover the other expenses seems to indicate that the innkeeper knew this man to be a man of good character. He was trustworthy. The Christian church possesses these sterling treasures. The Good Samaritan, the prodigal son, the Beatitudes, the Sermon on the Mount. These stories can inspire us and can help us build a good character. And a solid character not only gives us the confidence to withstand the temptations that come our way, but it also helps us to become a blessing to others. Philip Newell shares an episode from the final months of his father's life when dementia was destroying his memory. Philip said his father had always had this favorite blessing that he would often repeat. It's the blessing that Aaron gives in the book of Numbers. Some of you are familiar with it. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord be gracious unto you. It's the way it starts. In his father's closing days, he would sometimes bless people with these words. Well, when it came time for the father to stop driving, he actually drove for a while illegally. I'm sure none of you have done that, right? Philip had the task of helping his father sell the car. So Philip called the local car salesman and said, we're going to be in the next day. My father and I need to sell his car, and you'll notice that my father has some memory problems. He gets pretty confused at times, but I want you to make sure that you address him, not me. It's his car. The young salesman understood. The next day they meet at the car dealership, and the three of them are standing in the car salesman, the showroom. And there are a few awkward moments along the way. Philip's father said to the salesman, how much money do I need to give you for the car? The salesman said, no, Dr. Newell. We're going to give you money for the car. To which the father turned to Philip and said, now that's generous of them. At the end of the transaction, the young salesman gave Dr. Newell that check And Philip said to the salesman, "I think my dad would like to bless you." So there they are standing in the middle of the car showroom, and the father took both hands of the car salesman, looked him directly in the eyes. "The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance and give you peace." The tears were streaming down that salesman's face. He will never forget that moment. Never. His father had lost his wits, but he had not lost his character that had been forged over a lifetime. The Christian church is essential to society because in a world where there is little shame in being dishonest, arrogant, greedy, and abusive, the church can play a decisive role in helping people develop a virtuous character. And people of an exemplary character radiate light. May you light up the world.